One of the initial steps of the military PSYOP program is directed toward the hostland military establishment itself. Since the military represents the government to the populace, their actions and attitudes can do much to create a favorable image of that government in the minds of the people. A soldier's attitude goes a long way toward implementing an effective military PSYOP program. Among the support elements needed are the light mobile printing team with its printing and editorial shelters. Also needed is a radio team to support existing radio stations, particularly in the back country. An audiovisual vehicle will help to increase the effectiveness of face-to-face communications. And a loudspeaker team will support tactical operations.
Okay, it does say with Dr. Judy Wood, but what a liar I am. I tell you, today we have not Dr. Judy, but we have two people for the price of one. We have Alison and Ray, who started off chatting with us a little bit this afternoon and a lot on Saturday. So we're sort of picking up where we left off, and we don't have Dr. Judy with us tonight, but we are going to be talking about some really interesting stuff. So we thought what we would just do it under the auspices of, is that what we would call it? Under the auspices of the PSYOP program, because that's been going for a long time, and we may as well just carry on with all of our intrepid team here. So, hi there, Ray and Alison.
Hello. I was thinking if we just talk about Judy, that should be just good enough.
That's right. You're absolutely right. Well, it's not that we don't want to have Dr. Judy here. She's busy with her chickens and that sort of thing. She's having just a heyday with the chickens. She had a bit of a problem with her computer the other day, so we kind of filled in, and now we're just going with it, I tell you. Anyway, these are two very interesting folks who met on air when we did the show on Saturday, and I thought it was a good idea just to invite them back on, and we're going to carry on and continue together. Carry on. Talking about what we were discussing this afternoon. Now, I have to say that both Alison and Ray have been looking into alternative medicines, if you want to call it that, alternative C word, cure. Can we say that? Not really sure.
Health and healing.
Alternative healing techniques.
Healing techniques. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to hand it over to you before I get into big trouble by saying the wrong C word. Okay? So jump in. How about we have Ray jump in, because sometimes his Wi-Fi isn't that reliable. So we need
that way.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the world will cut me off here soon enough with the Wi-Fi throttling or whatever the issue is. My area is more based in the sodium chlorite aspect of healing, which is patented for HIV and ALS, has 100,000 documented cures of malaria, is used from everything from weight loss to erectile dysfunction to baldness reparation. Almost everything that ails us is remediable using sodium chlorite to oxidize the pathogens or the toxins away. One of the things I started in on the other day that I think is important for our listeners to, that Dr. Bob Beck did, and his work is on our website, freedomforcenews.com, and it's in the weight loss area. You should be able to find it under searching for weight loss there. But what Bob taught us was that the toxins that get in our body are surrounded by fat cells, and those fat cells appear as obesity, and some people may draw conclusions not based on science or fact, but another way. And the thing about it is that I don't think that very many people chose to get obese. It just was part of our diet and part of our system. And it's not so much the sugar, in my perspective, it's the toxins and the synthetics that are in the food today, and the pharmaceuticals, the drugs, the poisons that are in our atmosphere, our food, our water, the GMO foods, the glyphosate, the chemtrails, all of that stuff is all pulled into the body. And the body used to deal with storing toxins either in the processing them in the liver and then storing them in a calcified spot in the gallbladder. But we also would push it to the extremities, into the feet, and people with diabetes get bad feet. There's a number of different signs that the pharmaceutical agenda is micromanaging, but my position on it is let's just go for the root cause. Let's figure out what the problem is and let's address it. So I spent the better part of the last 10 years working on this with some of the other great minds in the world: Andreas Kalker, Kerry Rivera, Jim Humble, and a number of people whose names wouldn't mean anything to anybody in the world. And they're probably good with that, because there is and has been an agenda. Those who've made the key connection between autism and vaccines, and coming up with cancer cures, or free energy, or 400-mile carburetors, or any of these sorts of things. You can get into a lot of trouble going up against the system. So I had an opportunity to work with Jim Humble, and we advanced the technology. So using sodium chloride, where we got last was about a year ago when I checked in with one of our developers, and we have over 400 children who've fully recovered from autism using sodium chloride. And that work is mostly based on Andreas Kalker's parasite protocol, which is of course based on Jim Humble's work of sodium chloride. But Kerry Rivera took that work, and Joan has done an interview with both Andreas Kalker and Kerry Rivera, and she can probably put up the links and direct people to where that is. It's on the YouTube channel, on the character-driven YouTube channel.
Trying to organize things
and learn about some of those things. One of the most fascinating parts of it for me in the Kerry interview was Kerry speaks about how her son received a vaccination I think at about 2 years of age, and then went on to the spectrum after that, and didn't speak to her or communicate with her for 8 years. In 2009, Kerry found out through the Yahoo autism group. In those days, we were some huddling in corners in the web, and she found out about some people that were using sodium chloride, and they were having some success. And so she took that information, and she got some sodium chloride, and she tried it out on her son. And to hear Kerry talk about how after just a week of this, and then her son looked at her and spoke to her for the first time in 8 years, was pretty moving. The whole cost of sodium chloride is very, very small. I've seen people healed of cancer for under $100, and we're working all around the world with all kinds of illnesses. The Red Cross video, people can find Red Cross malaria on YouTube. We're in Uganda in 2012, and we heal 154 of 154 cases of malaria in 145 of them in 24 hours. And there were 9 people who didn't swallow it or didn't take it and spat it out or whatever, and we gave it back to them the next day. Everybody was 100% cured through the blood analogy, or a blood examination, and 154 of 154 at the cost of about a nickel per person. So there's lots of great connections that we can make between body purification and how we would achieve that. There's over 400 cures for cancer that have been suppressed, and sodium chloride is just one of them, but it is a very powerful one in my toolbox. And I know that Alison has been working around the world in South America and other places to also discover this information and bring it to the ears that are able to hear in North America. So it's nice to be able to sit with you all tonight and have this opportunity to share some of our experiences and some of the things that we've learned from some of the other great minds in the world today.
Speaking of
I'll,
which,
I'll pass it over to you for a minute.
mm-hmm.
Thanks, Ray. That was an excellent introduction to this topic. And I want to say that my specialty has been basically driven out of my being a mother. And I was very, very involved with searching and researching nutrition when my children were younger. I was brought up by a nurse. My mom's a nurse. So I was always, I always understood the correlation between good health and good food. For me, I think about food as being medicine. And food being medicine, that's kind of how I look at the healing is what are we eating and how is it affecting us? And it's interesting what you said about people storing fat, because I remember, seeing people who were drinking gallons and gallons and gallons of diet soda. And the diet soda was not making them smaller, it was making them bigger. And that's a great example of how we put a toxin into our body and our body's says, this is poison, what am I going to do with it? And like you said, it surrounds it in fat and puts it somewhere where it's safe. And that's a really good example of showing how something that's as simple as drinking a diet soda, people were turning to those artificial sweeteners for diet purposes and actually in some cases getting bigger, not actually losing weight. So I've really been delving into nutrition personally and with my family for over 40 years. My kids are getting old now. I got to remind myself of that. And I look at food as being the number one cause of our health problems today, because we're eating garbage. And even people who are eating food that they think is good food, they buy organic food, but that food is grown in contaminated land, and it's watered with contaminated water, and our air's got contaminations. It's really, no matter how hard we tried to monitor and to restrict our access to these foods, to poisons, our food source is being systematically poisoned. And that's a concern that I have, and that's one of the things that I was looking at is how can we protect the natural foods that are still left in this world, and especially in areas like the Amazon rainforest, where not only do we have 40% of the species of plants in the world, fruits and vegetables that most people have never seen or heard of. I've never seen that much variety. I literally, we would be walking in the jungle, and every single day I would discover new things that I could eat. There is no shortage of food in the jungle. But at the same time, that area is under a great amount of attack right now. And that's also where all of the plants that provide the medicines that the pharmaceutical companies are basically studying to create synthetic versions of. And again, those synthetic versions enter our bodies, and our bodies don't recognize them because it's not a natural substance. And this is why I want to we need to start going back to more natural ways, natural farming techniques, natural healing techniques, natural, back to the way we store our foods, the way we process our foods. These are all the things that are really important to me. And because I'm a mom and because I'm a grandma, and I worry for the future generations. We've lost.
I just wanted to say that I think that there might be another agenda here, which I think may be something that a lot of people don't address when they're talking about nutrition, food, that sort of thing, because we actually have going on in the world a certain type of agenda that is keeping this stuff from us, and it's called money. that is at the heart of it. But of course, I would even go so far as to say it's evil. There's so there's people that really, like yourself and like Ray, and I would like to think I'm in that category, where we're really trying to find ways to solve problems. But if you've got someone that's constantly, like the Roadrunner, laying traps for you, it's very difficult. Or sorry, the Roadrunner wasn't the one, it was Wile E. Coyote. Isn't that Hillary's name? Wiley. And I just think of it as a cartoon in some ways, so that we don't get so emotional about it. You've got these people that are constantly trying to kamikaze everything that we're trying to do that's good. Honestly, if you're trying to grow a garden these days, you have to do it inside. And one of the things I wanted to do was a chemtrail cover garden, because I just want to bring some of these things up too, because they're all part of the situation that we're dealing with here. We think that we're growing a garden that is organic, and I was talking to who's the guy, another Michael anyway. He did What in the World Are They Spraying? Michael Murphy. He was in Hawaii when I talked to him, and he was in one of the last areas where they were growing organic food. And these were the farmers that were really noticing that the crops were failing, and that they were purposely trying to obliterate some of the organic farms in Hawaii. Like, he was standing there in a field talking to me, and that was about 3 years ago, I think. So, not to be a downer, but I just wanted to address some of these issues as well. And we do have Ray back with us, but Alison or Ray, you're free to jump in. I just think it's a way that we might want to go to help people to understand some of the things we're up against here.
This was definitely one of the things that I noticed when I was down in South America. In Peru, you have there the indigenous people that have been maintaining sustainable farming techniques for thousands of years, but their crops are now failing, and their crops are failing because of changes in the climate, because of changes in the water systems. But also what's happening is there's a very, very big push from foreign intervention, people coming in saying these practices are not good. You need to change your practices. You need to start using this product. You need to start spraying this product. So this was my point, is the one area in the world where we have the last remaining vestige of purity is now being systematically contaminated. And while I was in Peru, I was shocked to see spraying going on, the chemtrails. And I mentioned to this woman that I was interviewing, that was her son is an environmental engineer, and I actually was interviewing him, and his mom was visiting from Lima, and she said, "Oh, this has been going on here for 20 years." It was heartbreaking for me to see that, because it's like, where is a safe place now? We're standing in the middle of a chemical shitstorm, and excuse my expression, but I don't know how else to say it, that we really have to.
That is the scientific term.
Yeah, that's a pretty scientific term for me too.
Biological.
Yeah. So basically it's like, what do we do, and how do we harness this, and how do we, like one of the problems for me is I will try and address some of these subjects, and people will refuse to acknowledge the truth. They will refuse to acknowledge, or they'll deny, or they'll say it's too expensive. It's too expensive to eat healthy food. One of the things that's always been like a crazy thing to me is, why do the organic farmers have to pay for certification? The farmers that are spraying poison on the food should have to certify that they're putting poison on the food.
That's my point, and I think that's what I'm trying to get at, because there's a certain naivety in thinking that we can actually go ahead and grow things the way that we did when we were kids, and just have them come out of the ground and be better than something that you're buying in the store. And the other thing is, for those of us that don't live in the jungle, who are relying on having good food, there are problems that we need to look at that go farther than the food, that go farther than the free energy and that sort of thing. These are suppressed technologies, and then there's also technologies that have been co-opted and taken away from us, and that I think is part of what we're fighting against in terms of the whole phenomenon that's taking place right now, whether it's the child trafficking or any of that sort of thing. It's a whole ball of wax, if you want to put it that way. That's how I see it, that we're trying to unravel something that has no beginning, no end. And how do we address that? How do we actually look at that in terms of, well, you know, I could throw anything in. We could talk about the Q phenomenon. Why are people so, why are they so attracted to the fact that there's going to be relief from what the tyranny we've been living under? That is a question.
Lots of answers or ideas to that one. I wanted to add to the conversation that hydrochloric acid, the stomach acid, is the first line of defense in our bodies. And the H. pylori bacteria is one that prevents the stomach acid from doing its job. And what stomach acid does is a number of things, but it eliminates the stuff that's not supposed to be there, and it breaks down the things that we take into our body so that our body can assimilate them, and one of them being magnesium. So if we're not producing enough hydrochloric acid, which is the first line of defense in our immune system, we're really kind of out to lunch, so to speak, on being able to achieve any other levels of health. So I look at the health food stores that are owned by the pharmaceutical agenda, and the health food products, the health industry products that are owned by the pharmaceuticals, and we know that they've got dead and incorrect compounds and agents in that stuff. I'm not seeing a whole lot of people getting healed from that industry. The GMO plants, they are that company Monsanto, they've made plants that are glyphosate ready, and glyphosate is, of course, killing off the stomach biome.
Mm-hmm.
And that, of course, is what our digestive system is, and what our immune system is, and our ability to assimilate these things. And again, we see the examples of that in the obesity of people, especially in the United States, and somewhat in Canada as well. So how do we address it? And to speak to your point about what's missing, there's a real hunger in people today to find reason and meaning and direction in their lives. And I think that we're going to start to see that as we go forward, as the information comes out. The Q phenomena, it's not important to me if Q is male, female, black, white, green, yellow, Martian, or Venetian. It does not matter who Q is, how many Qs there are, or not, how many there aren't. What Q tells us is that Q is a group of individuals, more than one, less than a handful. The team that I work with has an idea that there may be as many as 10 people on that team that are aware and that are disseminating the information. What's really important about the Q information is that people are being cued to learn things and to investigate things. And we're having conversations at the grocery store lineup, at the bank teller, at the dinner table, at the water cooler, at work, and on radio and YouTube and social media. And yeah, we are kind of in a civil war over it. And we've kind of got the information base versus those who maybe haven't done the research but have just kind of go along with the indoctrination of the university, the mainstream media, the publications that they've read, and maybe have failed to recognize that everything has been weaponized. Education is weaponized. Science is weaponized. Energy is weaponized. It's more than just guns. Everything is weaponized against us. And everybody's been kind of complacent, and they've been serving their masters at the bank with their mortgages and their jobs, and they give us a recession, and they give us higher interest rates, so we get less money and we have to work harder. And now everybody in the family has to get a job, and the parents are working 2 jobs and 2.5 jobs just to make ends meet. They're not raising their kids anymore. Television, video games, and now social media are raising our children, and they're not getting the nurturing that human beings require in order to grow to grow. The straight and narrow is the term that I'm sure you girls are familiar with. So there's lots of things, but we're working on it. We're all working on it in our own ways, and we're hoping that we reach a few minds, and they'll reach a few minds, and this will continue to spread. It's like the 100th monkey syndrome. There was a monkey who figured it out somehow. Maybe it was shown by a less haired monkey, and then by the time we get to the 100 monkey syndrome, all the monkeys are doing it, even though that they aren't aware of each other. And I think that that speaks to spirit consciousness or mass consciousness of our species, something that science maybe doesn't recognize very well, but I think that there's evidence for it in the field and in the results that we see in the world. So what we're hoping is that by having these conversations politely and nicely, and without a mean spirit, without trying to be victorious over anybody, but sharing this information with each other in an adult, civil fashion, it's interesting, and it sparks curiosity in the human psyche to go and research it. And if we don't offend people, if we're not out to be victorious, then people are going to have a better chance to go out into the world and say, I heard something, and let me check on that. And I don't know how your life works, but I know that how mine life works. And I hear things will happen in my life. There will be cues in my life that will show me that I'm to have a look here or there or another place, or that this isn't quite really what I'm interested in. So I think that we need to take a look at our internal guidance systems and follow the direction that is within, more so than to look outside into the world to find somebody or something to follow. And so I'm not really a Q follower in so much as I'm a Q observer. I'm an observer of life. I'm a student of life. And Q gives us cues that I wouldn't normally get, and I'm certainly not going to get it from mainstream media. I'm not going to get it from TV. I'm not going to get it from Facebook or Twitter. Generally speaking, in the past, it's changing. We're seeing more and more people learning the information, learning our history, learning the deceptions, and taking a stand and being a voice for reason and truth and fact. And I think that I think that we're at the 23rd monkey now. I think we've got about 65 to 75 more monkeys to go before we reach that tipping point. But I think that that's the importance of what Q has been doing for us, is giving people a reason to participate, something to look at, something to look in and have this conversation. Q says where we go one, we go all, and Q talks about how it's important that we work together and that we stay together, and that it's the power of the people. And that's, of course, while I recognize that the three of us tonight are not American, we will all agree that the American way of life has influenced us all, for better and for worse, around the globe for at least 100 years. So it's my hope that by participating in the Q phenomenon and working some of the information, having these conversations, that we're all going to be able to move together forward towards the truth, more so than a sports team and a rah, 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 I was right, you were wrong thing. We really need to work together to get towards the truth.
That's what I wanted to get at here, I guess, as far as the Q thing, because, if we were to have a show where we were going to sit around disseminating all the information about Q, there's a big difference between where we go one, we go all, and a limited hangout or a collection agency. And one of the reasons that I call this a PSYOP recovery program is so that people can understand the difference between what is a collection agency, because there seems to be this tendency with people to sort of glom onto somebody who's going to disseminate everything for them, cut up their meat and help them to eat it. And, for the vegetarians in the group, I'm sorry for using that analogy, but I think that's how I see it. It's time to move on to the more the less elemental things for folks, and yet they continue to not do their own research. And I'm phrasing this in a negative way because it is a bit of a negative thing that I'm finding, that no matter how you present it to people, they're still going to go to these limited hangouts. They're going to go to places where they're getting folks who agree with them, and then this kind of this raw idea that's sort of like a football game. And pardon me for throwing a bit of water on the concept. And I do appreciate all of the ideas that you're putting forward. My question is, how do we engage people at the level of going and being sure that what they're doing is has integrity and has substance and is evidence-based?
Well, I guess I want to add to the whole idea of tipping point, because that's one of the things, as soon as Ray mentioned the word tipping point, I was nodding my head, yes, yes, yes. Because I believe that we're approaching, I don't know if you know how a tipping point works, but you don't have to have 50% in order to tip the scales, or 51%.
No.
In the public, in the population, you really need only to have 10% of the people on board to achieve that tipping point, because then it's like the snowball effect. Mm-hmm. And what I have found personally for myself is 5 years ago, I was ridiculed continually for my beliefs and for my, seriously, I lost friends and family
we see
over
it in
my ideas. But now I had
we all have.
Right. I had a conversation in the driveway a couple of hours ago with somebody who came to do an errand here, and he asked me a question, and I told him, oh yeah, I'm just preparing for this radio program tonight. And he's like, oh, what is it about? Blah, blah, blah. And we had an hour-long conversation, and he was very receptive to the ideas that I was presenting. That never would have happened 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Never would have happened. So I see now that people are starting to recognize, like we've had this chorus of fake news that's been going on. Like Donald Trump, that's one of the things that I can say, bless his little heart, he's brought to the forefront fake news. And people, I think that narrative has been interrupted slightly, and people are starting to realize, hey, wait a minute, maybe we aren't getting all the right facts here. And I ask people the simple question, like, do you think that the church and state have ever committed crimes against the people before? Of course, we all know that. We all know that the church was responsible for committing heinous crimes, and we know that the states in Canada, the Canadian government has committed crimes. We know that the American government is. We know that these things have gone on. And then I ask them, well, what makes you think that those things aren't still happening today? And I think people now are really starting to open up a little bit more. And I see like these hashtags on Twitter, like the Great Awakening and stuff like that. And sure, they might, again, that's again more of the sports mentality. We've created like these little slogans and cheers and clubs that we can all belong to. But I think that people are also really scared, and they're willing to listen a little bit more now, but they've had so many years of resistance built into them that they don't really know how to enter into that conversation. And I think what it is just a matter of, we need to learn how to frame the conversation in a way that it's not so frightening for people to actually become part of it. Mm-hmm. And we need to have the conversation not be quite so scary, because a lot of what's going on in the world, people just don't want to hear about it because they don't want to face those things. We don't want to know that our government is doing horrible things to us. We don't want to know that there's people out there doing terrible things to children. We don't want to know that they're poisoning our food, because knowing those things knowing something comes with a certain amount of responsibility and obligation. Once you know that a child is in danger, we have a right and a responsibility to do something about it. Yeah. So a lot of people don't want to know the truth because they don't want to have to act on it.
Yeah.
They don't want to believe. They don't want to believe that driving their giant truck and getting 2 miles to the gallon is damaging the environment, because that would mean that they have to drive a different vehicle. They don't want to know that eating McDonald's is bad for them, because then they don't, because they're used to doing that, and they don't want to have to change the pattern of lifestyle that they've developed. There's always an upheaval before change, but I think we're on the edge of that that peak, that cliff. We're on the edge of it now, and a lot of people are willing to take the leap. I think we just need to reframe the conversation so that's not quite so frightening for people.
Well, people are definitely becoming more aware of the fact that the world is not as it seems, and I think that's the first step toward any of this other solution-oriented stuff taking place, because we have to have the conversation about, you know, that it isn't as comfortable as you think. It's not a comfortable pew. You've got to be aware of certain things that are realities, whether it's 9/11, whether it's all of the different false flags. We've got somebody that mentioned Syria turning out to be fake news. And so it's really hard to disseminate what is fake, what is not fake, and how to parse it. It's just often too much for people to go through this. And I think, again, that's part of the Q phenomenon, is that they've got people that are in, you know, on programs like this, and they've got chat rooms and various places where folks can go and kind of learn something, because their jaws are open, going, oh, I didn't know any of this. For all that you and Ray and I have had some background in this, imagine yourself having to become aware that it's not just Syria and it's not just the fake news, but like everywhere you look, it's a psyop, and it's kind of frightening because you don't know where to begin.
Right. I mean, here's a prime example. You just mentioned the Syria, and Syria is like forefront right now because of, you know, the attack last night and things like that. But the mainstream perception, like last year, I boycotted for the first time ever in my life watching the Oscars, because I saw that The White Helmet, a documentary produced by George Clooney, was nominated for Best Documentary. And I could not believe it, because the White Helmets are a terrorist organization. And I'm like, how can this be nominated for Best Documentary? Because it's a documentary, in my eyes, is something that should be factual. So how could this even qualify as the best documentary? Because it's pure 100% propaganda. And I was shocked even more to find out that it won. It actually won for Best Documentary. For me as a documentary filmmaker, for me as a person who has strived to find the truth for my entire life, I thought, and I've dreamed of being an Oscar winner. Like, this has been a dream of mine for 35 years.
Well, you got the Hollywood background. I think people might not know that too. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about that.
You know, but you know, let's look at the Me Too campaign. Well, I was part of that whole thing. When I was living in Los Angeles for 14 years, I had an interview with New Line Cinema. New Line Cinema is a big company. I was very excited because a friend of mine had a contact, a big producer at New Line Cinema. I will not use his name because I don't want to enter into a lawsuit at this point in time, but I will say that I had an interview with this person, and I showed up for the interview. And I was, at that point in time, I was a qualified producer. I had done a couple of feature films. I'd had a very good record of coming in on time, on budget with my projects. Working with a small budget to produce a film is far more challenging than working with a $60 million budget, because you don't have all the help and the money. You've got to still do the same job with handcuffs and a ball and chain around your leg. So I was pretty proud of what I had accomplished. And I showed up at this interview. And a lot of people get really confused because they see me and they think I'm an actress because I'm a female and I'm presentable, and they don't give me credibility as a producer because they think that the producers are the men. So I kind of have that as a handicap to begin with. I walk into this guy's office and I sit down, and I said, "Thank you so much for seeing me." And he asked me, "Oh, before we get started, can you go into," he had an ensuite bathroom in his office. It was a very swank office. He said, "Can you please go into the bathroom? In the medicine cabinet, there's a container of lotion. Can you bring it to me, please?" I thought, oh, this is an interesting test. I went into the bathroom. I got the lotion from the little cabinet in there, and I brought it to him, and I put it on his desk. He goes, "Would you mind rubbing this on my cock for me?" Now, this was an interview for a producing position. Now, I was outraged instantly, and I created a scene when I left that office. I created a scene, and I basically made it known. I stood in his doorway, and I said, there's no way ever in a million years that I would ever take a job working with New Line Cinema if this is what they expect of their producers. I am a qualified person. I'm not here as a prostitute. And I walked down the hallway with him coming after me saying, "Oh, it's a mistake. It's a mistake. You don't understand. You misunderstood me. You misunderstood me." I'm like, "No, it was very clear. It was very clear what your intentions were." When I got home, I got a phone call from the guy who had set the interview up for me, and he was angry. "What did you do? You pissed off my friend." So, like, this is the world that we live in. This is why I'm never going to succeed in Hollywood, because it's a system that's dirty and ugly and rigged. And the Oscars are rigged, and the football games are rigged, and people need to, like, wake up to those facts. But how do we bring them that information without freaking the heck out of them?
I think Ray
That's
was
my
We
whole
have this conversation.
Yeah, you know, that's just one instance of an occurrence that happened to me in Hollywood. Just one. I was recruited by a guy whose job it was to supply girls for parties. I was so naive, I had no idea that that's what he was doing. He kept inviting me to these parties. I was going to, like, these big fancy parties up in the Hollywood Hills, and I had no idea that his job was to bring a bunch of pretty girls to the parties. And that's what he was doing. And somebody said to me, "Oh, did Mike invite you? Big Mike?" I'm like, "Yeah, he did." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, great." And I find out that Big Mike was basically like a pimp for these parties. So Big Mike's number got taken out of my phone shortly after that.
Well, this has been the agenda, right? I wouldn't say right from the very get-go, but certainly right from the beginning of Hollywood in the 20s and 30s. You can hear stories from the women that were not only taken to parties, but they were taken to ranches outside the city where they actually were pretty much trapped, and they weren't able to leave. So it's always been, I mean, Hollywood is just a pedophile haven or a pimp haven. It's a way of having lovely women and good-looking guys come out to be at your beck and call. You know, it doesn't matter even if you pay them. Honestly, if you just put them up on the screen and put a credit there, it seems that they're willing to do pretty much anything. And that's part of the human nature that I'm curious about as well too. I mean, obviously you saw it for what it was, but there are clearly a lot of people that are willing to sell themselves short, sell themselves for the big paychecks or the Oscar, the shiny things, in exchange for some pretty heinous stuff.
Yeah, I guess for me that, money just has never really been that important. I really always have just done what I believe I want to. Like, I wouldn't do certain kinds of commercials. I wouldn't do certain kinds of projects because I want to have integrity. It's like my standards are just a little bit higher, I guess. But I'm a poor filmmaker. I'm not going to be well known because I'm not willing to play in that arena, and it's controlled. So, I mean, I recognized that a long time ago. I found ways to keep myself busy. I work as an audiovisual technician, and I work doing palliative care to earn money so that I can produce my own projects. Nobody pays me for the work that I do as a journalist. Nobody pays me for my documentary work. I do it myself because I want to spread I want to spread that message. And I recognize that the minutes I take money from somebody, they control me.
Well, this is, again, the overarching concept that we're talking about. We started off talking about food. You could talk about pretty much anything. Sex, food, all Hollywood, everything has its roots in this bartering system, which is how much are you willing to give up of yourself in order to make money or to have a name for yourself or to have control. And a lot of the people that are in charge of those operations are basically using us as slaves to their own ends. And you look at what's happening in Hollywood with the pedophilia that has been covered over for decades, if not a century. You know, it's really something that is very obvious to the people that have been there, but it's very difficult for people to believe. How do you broach that subject? I mean, do people actually are they still tied to the Hollywood thing? Are they listening? Are they understanding that there might be a bit of a pedophilia problem?
I think we've been highly desensitized, and I'm saying we, but I'd like to take myself out of that equation because I stopped watching TV quite a while ago, and I've always been a very critical TV watcher. When I watch a program, I watch it from a filmmaker's point of view, or from a programming point of view. I look at the shots. I look at how they're telling the story. I don't look at TV or movies the way a normal person watches movies. A lot of us just allow ourselves to be sucked in, and we just go on this little journey. But we have been systematically over the history of the media, so let's just say radio, television, video games, it's gradually been degraded. The violence has gotten more. The sexism has gotten more. The degrading of the family unit has gotten worse. We don't notice it because it's been a very slow, gradual change. Like, I look at things now, like horror movies, the gratuitous violence, the gore, it's so disturbing to me. And people are letting small children watch this programming. Mm-hmm. We're damaging youngsters at a very young age because they don't have the critical skills to deal with the information that they're seeing. Mm-hmm. They're playing video games that they don't have emotional and social maturity to actually deal to. Their spirits are being broken because they don't have those critical skills. Years ago, I taught a program when my children were in elementary school. They had different programs during spring break and during the summer break for parents who were working full time. And I taught a couple of programs. As a filmmaker, I volunteered to create a program, and I taught kids a program that I called media literacy. And I had two age groups, one that was like 6 to 9 and the other one that was 9 to 13, something like that. And the kids, the younger kids, I taught them, what's the difference between a commercial and a show and the news? Because when children watch TV, they don't see those differentiating lines. They don't realize a commercial is designed to sell them a product. A PSA is there to give them information. It's a public service announcement. The news is supposed to be delivering factual information.
Used to be. I just have to throw that in with the PSAs,
right.
Because,
so
now, imagine
yeah,
now.
So I taught this program so that the children could learn those things. And I got such a strong response from the parents. And with the older, and basically this was a very hands-on course. It was really fun for me teaching this little program. It was a hands-on course for the younger kids and the older kids. They wrote their own stories. They created their own program. I said, let's make a commercial. Let's pick a product and let's figure out how we can sell this to people. How can we make people buy this product? Or let's go out into the street and let's find something news. Let's find something that's happening, and how do we transmit that information to other people? And let's make up a story and let's tell a little story like the same way. Let's make believe. You're going to be the fireman, and you're going to be the guy that's stuck in a burning building, and you're going to be the guy that's trying to like help them, and we would create these little scenarios. So they were actually participating with this program. I think a lot of adults need that because we've become lulled into this, and again, this goes back to the backwards, because if you look at this, when you look at a lot of the TV programming that's on now, we look at it and we think it's make-believe. We look at shows like The Blacklist and Quantum, Quantico, which is a show about the FBI. We look at these programs, 24 Hours and Designated Survivor and all these different political dramas. And we think that they're make-believe, but they're real. They're actually presenting real stuff, and the packaging it make it look like it's a story. I watched one episode of Designated Survivor, which is a show with Kiefer Sutherland, and he becomes the president by default because everybody else gets killed by a terrorist attack. And in this one episode, they were promoting this idea of this guy from Turkey that had come to the United States, and he was this great guy, and he was building all these schools, and he was this educator, and the Turkish government was trying to have him extradited because in Turkey he was considered a criminal and a terrorist, and the United States was protecting this guy, and so the whole episode was built around making this guy sound like he was this great guy, and they were going to keep him in the States because Turkey was wrong. Well, this was the story of Gulen and the charter schools. There's an actual guy in Pennsylvania whose name is Gulen, and he's running these charter schools, and he's training these kids that are going to be future terrorists. And the American government refuses to extradite him to Turkey. This is real stuff that's being packaged in a television show. We don't even realize it's real stuff. So before it used to be make-believe, and now it's like real stuff packaged as make-believe.
Well, I think that's exactly the agenda at this point, and they don't call it programming for nothing, but it's predictive programming, it's MK Ultra, it's everything else you can imagine. It's a way of getting us not to be able to draw the lines between reality and fakery. And ironically, the more real things are, the less people are inclined to embrace it or believe it. You know, if you talk about something like pedophilia, you talk about something like human trafficking, organ harvesting, etc., or the fact that we're being psyoped, people are way less likely to believe that than they are the idea that there's some guy who's gone to the moon.
Did somebody go to the moon?
Just as an example, I gotta say, poor old Ray. He's having I shouldn't call him poor old Ray. I should just say poor Ray. He's having a hard time staying online because he's living on a boat and he has to catch as catch can when it comes to his internet connectivity. So that's what we hear in the background with the little Tinkerbell sounds. It's very cute, isn't it?
I'm having a hard time feeling sorry for him living on a boat because that's a dream for me. I don't feel sorry for him one bit, but it's unfortunate that he's not here to pipe in on the conversation because he's always got something wonderful to say.
Well, I think he's listening, and hopefully there are people that are listening in his milieu, if you want to call it that, the people that he's been working with. I want to give a shout out if we do have people from Texas and various areas where he is collaborating on his website, and it's freedomforestnews.com. I'll just put in a plug there, and you can always meet him there because he does a lot of the articles and he interacts with people. If you want more information about sodium chlorite, that's your place to go. A lot of people ask me about that because I do the shows, but I don't actually, I don't deal with the sodium chloride itself. And so if you want to go there, you can find out a lot more. Anyway, carrying on with what you were saying, Alison.
No, I was gonna tell people definitely go to his site because he's curated a lot of great information, and there's also a lot of resources there as well. I think this is, one of the things that I'm trying to do now is maybe change my approach a little bit because a lot of people accused me of being very judgmental and preachy, and that they didn't like the way I was passing out information. So I really took a step back and I looked at how am I presenting the information, and I realized that it's not the way I'm presenting the information. It's the way people are expecting to see and hear information, because I don't package my information the same way that people are used to seeing it, which is delivered through film and television and music and messaging. I was a voice that was not playing at the same frequency that people are used to hearing. And when I started recrafting my messaging a little bit differently so it matched some of the narrative, then I found people to be a little bit more open to hearing it. And I think part of it is we've become so conditioned that, like for me, when I step away from the country, like being in South America for me was really refreshing in so many ways because I had a total disconnect. I was living in a very remote area for some time, and I only had a couple of hours of access to internet each week. And that was really healing for me in a lot of ways. I really needed to get away from a lot of the pain that I was carrying and process things and just decide for myself, how can I live in this world and be more productive and be more helpful. And And I think that talking about the whole sports mentality, I actually put on a Montreal Canadiens jersey tonight to remind myself that I'm on a team, that we're all on a team. But I'm really happy to say that I've discovered a group of people that are now working in concert. It's really exciting for me to see, like Ray's site, that there's a bunch of people that are working together to try and come up with solutions. That they're not just waiting for somebody else to come and fix the problem for them. And people who before were not willing to even admit that there was a problem. You can't change something or fix something unless you're willing to first of all admit that there's a problem. So now people are realizing, yes, there is a problem. Yes, there is pedophilia in Hollywood. Yes, there is messaging in our music and messaging in our programming. Yes, there is a history of clandestine operations in governments. Yes, there is a history of broken promises by politicians. I mean, we just need to look at the history, and then we can start moving forward to making changes in the future. And so, I mean, this for me, I would really welcome any hints from people, like how do they want to hear things? Is it easier to show? Is it easier to read? Everyone's got a different technique.
Well,
and
it's interesting.
How do we reach?
Sorry, as we talk about this and as we talk things out, I find that my mind works a little bit better that way, because often I'm sort of distracted with other things that I'm doing as you're having conversations with people. But what I find is when I'm doing shows, I'm able to really hone in on what we're talking about here, and not have my mind going to 100 different places. And that's part of the jungle that we have in our own heads. I mean, you went to the jungle to get free of that, but it's interesting because we all have our places that we go where we can actually start to focus and start to heal. And for me, it's this process of having a show where we can interact with other people around the world. Like I'm able to talk to somebody today from Ohio, or I was talking to somebody in another eastern state. It's amazing to me that we have this ability to communicate with each other. And I'm thinking about the people that tune into this show, some from Germany, all over the world. And right now, what I've put up on the screen, since you were talking about it, I decided I may as well put up the Freedom Force website. And one of the things that we were sort of talking about before the show is how do we draw focus, I suppose, for this show itself, and also the very fact that someone like Ray is, he's a little bit challenged as far as being able to connect. And I'm looking at his website and I'm thinking, well, he's already connecting in so many different ways. Why not just put that up on the screen? And I would love it. I don't know if Ray's listening, but if he would be able to show us sometime to go through the website. But I've got it up there, and I want people to just notice that it's Freedom Force Pioneers North, East, West, and South, which is what news came from. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but that was the origin of the word news. And he's actually captured that and put it together in this site. So now it's just become a promotion of Freedom Force news. But I'm almost thinking that this is the show that we're doing here on air is sort of equivalent to what he's doing through his website. And it's rather eclectic, but it's focused on this idea of giving people the tools that they need to be able to share the information, to heal themselves, to even just have a community, which is, I think, what the Q phenomenon is about. People just want to gather together and know that there are others out there that are like them. So I'm promoting this for the rest of the show, and who knows, maybe we'll just have a Freedom Force news updates. I think that might be an idea because he's got so many resources there that we can draw on. Anyway, I'm going to hand it back to you, but I wanted to let you know because I don't think you can see what's on the screen. It's not being shared on our meeting here, but I do have it up for the audience.
No, it's excellent. I actually poked around on there for quite a while, and I got swept away because There's really a wealth of information and great resources and great tools on there. So I was really happy. And the other thing too is I found through that exercise some really powerful Twitter accounts to follow. And that actually reminds me of something that I was talking about in my little driveway conversation earlier today, when I was amazed at this person listening to what I had to say so intently. I had been talking, I used as an example this CDC doctor that had been recently found. And I quoted him a part of an article, and what happened with this this physician that worked at the CDC. He went missing for several weeks. His family was concerned. He left work saying he wasn't feeling very well, and nobody ever saw or heard from him after that. A couple of days ago, his body was found in the river. He's dead. And an article in the Washington Times said in the headline, CDC physician found dead, foul play not suspected, or foul play is ruled out, or something like that.
Of course.
That was the headline. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because I think there's a lot of controversy over the details here. Now, I went down and I read to see what the rest of the content was in this article, which was quite lengthy. And all through that article, there was all sorts of inconsistencies and all sorts of information that contradicted what that initial heading was. And I realized this is how a lot of people get their news. They see a headline and they just remember the headline. And this is where we're going wrong, is because that headline was highly, highly, highly misleading. It made it seem like there was no foul play, but it was a headline. You have to read the article. And we've become lazy because there's so much information. Not lazy, I shouldn't say that. People are not becoming lazy. There's so much information coming at us that we're just overwhelmed. We're really overwhelmed. And, you know, people ask me too, where do you get your information from? Well, sometimes I spend 18 or 20 hours a day on the internet, digging, researching. Not everybody has that time. Hopefully people can find someone that they trust that can sort of point them in the right direction every now and then. Because even for me, sometimes I think, I don't know if this is right or if this is wrong. I don't know if this guy's a white hat or a black hat. I don't know if is Donald Trump a good guy or a bad guy? Like, I don't really know anymore. You know, all these things, for me, I don't know. And I'm making it a full-time job to find those answers. So I can imagine people, just normal, regular, everyday folks that, you know, work in the post office or the grocery store or the construction site or teach in a classroom, for them to sift through this volume of information that's being thrown at us, misinformation, disinformation, it's really difficult. So now that's one of the things that I really appreciated when I got to Ray's site, was I found a couple of wonderful YouTube providers. I found a couple of really good Twitter accounts to follow, because I knew already certain things to be fact because I've researched them myself. And I looked for people that resonated and agreed with those. So I'm thinking, okay, let me look at this person. They're on the same page as me. I can look at the rest of their information. I look at one or two of the things. I see how they verify their information. I see that their information is accurate. Then I can look at them as possibly a trusted source. Having said the words trusted source, I want to also add my motto and for living, which is the 5 agreements, and the number 5th being listen but be skeptical. Because even the most educated and the most thoughtful and the most careful journalists will misquote or make mistakes. We're all human. We do make mistakes. We find information that we think is true and that somehow or another it's not. So I guess, you know, it's a matter of just finding a way to deal with all that information that works for you. And yeah, I feel sorry for the general public, because they've got a lot of confusion and a lot of messages coming at them from so many different directions. It's no wonder we don't know what's going on in the world. It's not surprising at all.
I'm not sure if you can see the screen share that I'm doing. Can you see what I've got up on the screen? No signs of foul play and death of CDC scientist. Anyway, what I've got, I'm just showing it for the folks at home, because this is from CNN, and I'm just showing them what you were talking about in terms of this doctor who is really sad. You see this picture up on a tree of a missing doctor, and there we have it on CNN, the CIA
Right.
network, and this is the kind of thing that people just look at and they go, oh yeah, that's too bad. There was a guy that was missing, now he's found. And the implications of this are so far-reaching. Can you see it on your screen?
Yeah, I can see it now. And basically, I'd like to speak to that as well because I just got.
Let me just get rid of get rid
super ad
of
for-
head CIA guy. I can't control their site. I'm just saying.
There you go. There's a prime example. They're forcing information at you. You're trying to look at an article, and they're popping up Anderson Cooper as your trusted source. Exactly the point I'm trying to make.
Well, that's why I wanted to put this on the air, because I think it's, since we're in a visual medium, except for the people that are listening on air streaming, they're not able to see this, but they can certainly go over to YouTube and see the archive of this little show that we're doing here. But if you want to mention something more about this, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, there's a prime example right there of how we get bombarded with information and we get hijacked because stuff pops up at us. Like, I can't even use some of my devices because they're so full of crap that I don't want on there. Like, I can't add my work program, a scheduling program, onto my tablet because it says my tablet is full. My tablet is full of Google programs. My tablet is full of programs that I don't want, but I can't remove those programs because they're proprietary. So I can't put a program that I want for my purpose on my own tablet that I paid for because proprietary software is taking up all the space. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, that's a prime example of how our devices are controlled.
I love these words, by the way. Devices, programming. It's quite interesting, isn't it, when we think about how these words have come into the lexicon. They're perfect words.
Is another word.
Which one?
Yeah, and let's go back to a second for this CDC, because I think this is a great example just to show people. I spent quite a bit of time researching this particular story because I've always been interested in the CDC, and I think that they're manipulating, doing germ warfare and manipulating viruses, and I believe that we are being maliciously attacked with toxic agents and with I read an article this morning that they're developing a new strain of yellow fever. What the heck would they want to develop a new strain of yellow fever for? I mean, really, why is that necessary?
They've got the antidote.
Right. Well, I paid $500 for a vaccination so that I could go into, and that was mandatory. For me to fly to Peru, I had to have a yellow fever vaccine. That was mandatory by law. And that vaccine cost me almost $500. It was not covered by the healthcare system. So sure, somebody's making a lot of money off of that. And so let's talk about this guy from the CDC. I asked myself questions. Okay, what was this guy working on? What was he working on? Well, he was working on Ebola, he was working on Zika, and he was working on the flu shot. Oh, well, those are pretty inflammatory subjects. So, and all of his, he left work feeling unwell, but never made it home. And like you said, how sad is it that they have a notice up on a tree? That's how CNN has chosen to present this story. It's like a missing poster, like a dog on a tree. They're making him look like a dog. Mm-hmm. We don't who puts that's how people used to look for pets.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That was the first thing that came to mind when I saw it, because I was just looking for it while you were talking, and it was quite stunning, actually, that we have a picture of him on the tree. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's so demeaning. It's right. worse than a milk carton.
This is a highly decorated physician. He's very, very qualified. He was working on some big projects, and they're trying to make him look like some unimportant person.
What I want to say too is this is what they do with Dr. Judy as well. They call him, it says, the remains of Timothy Cunningham. They don't say Dr. Timothy Cunningham. They don't say Dr. Cunningham. This is a classic way of demeaning people, which is why I constantly call Dr. Judy Wood Dr. Judy. You know, it's not about whether you deserve it or don't deserve it. It's a way of respecting people and giving them their due when they've done things that are above and beyond, for one thing. But this is a way of doing the opposite, to denigrate him and to say, well, it's just some guy, picture on the tree, and he drowns. Sorry to interrupt, but it makes me mad.
No, even keep it there for a second. Look at the caption. On February the 12th, Timothy J. Cunningham, not Dr. Cunningham, left work early complaining he didn't feel that's a negative word. He complained he didn't feel well. Again, they're framing it in a way to make him look like some guy that's complaining.
Well, look at there were
And
in
then
the death of
was
the
also-
U.S. Centers for
there was
Disease
also-
Control. I'm sorry.
Right.
It's just
No,
how
they also
describe him.
created the story that he had been passed up for promotion. That was how they first launched the story. He felt that he had been passed up for promotion. They tried to make it look like he was suicidal. That was how they tried presenting the story right from the beginning when he first became missing, was that he had been passed up by promotion.
Mm-hmm.
So they're discrediting him before they even found the dead body.
This entire thing is exactly, we just happened to do this at random. You came up with a story, I came up with a visual, and this was not planned at all. And this gives you an example of the insidiousness of this, because it's the first thing that you find when you, and granted, I did do a Google search, and I did it on purpose because I wanted to see what was coming to the top. I know a lot of people do DuckDuckGo or Start Page, and so they should. But when you're wanting to do research to find out what the narrative is, sometimes it's worth it to go, with a VPN of course, to Google and see exactly what they're trying to promote, because it becomes quite obvious.
Could you right now just do a quick search on DuckDuckGo and show the difference of what comes up?
Let's just see. I'm gonna let's open this and we will go. I don't have DuckDuckGo on here, but we will. So this is where you find it, folks. It actually is attached, or sorry, it's an add-on in my other.
You can just go straight
computer.
to it, yeah.
There we go. There you go. Your data shouldn't be for sale at DuckDuckGo. We agree. So, you know what? I'll just add that there. This is how you add it. Nothing like doing it real time, eh? Easy breezy.
Right.
Okay, so now we have that. And I also want to mention Start Page here. Usually I have, just because Dr. Catherine Albrecht started Start Page, and I really like her work. She has Start Mail. So, we don't need to necessarily go to one or the other. It's good to go to a few different places. So let's do a comparison. So we've got DuckDuckGo here, and let Ray in. We're going to watch me admit Ray. There we go. Hi, Ray. Okay, so here we are on DuckDuckGo, and we're going to put CDC, exactly what I put before, which was CDC doctor, I think, found dead. There we go. See how it helps me? Let's see what we have here. Okay, so again, we have CNN at the top. And
I got to stop you right now. Top corner, Snopes. Let's talk about Snopes.
Let's talk about Snopes.
Who made Snopes the big fact-checking authority? Because it's a husband and a wife working out of their basement. Give me a break.
I wonder who's funding that.
Right. So there you go. When people throw Snopes at me, I gotta laugh, because Snopes is not an authority. People do not rely on
this. Was the body of a CDC doctor who exposed, quote unquote, the flu shot found floating? Well, okay. Let's just see what they have to say. I'm curious. I think we can handle it. Okay. So let's see. At least they call him a doctor. Got to give him that. CDC doctor who sworn.
Yeah.
This is really fun. Hey, folks, this is what we do here for fun. We have people come and go. And let's just, so here we go. Oh, it's false. Gee, I'm surprised, aren't you?
Yeah,
it's
well, you know
amazing.
what? They got to make him look like an idiot. That's their job. They're paid to do that.
So what is false about it?
It's fake
It,
news.
it is true that the body of Timothy Cunningham, an epidemic, was found in an Atlanta river more than 6 weeks after his. It's true. That's true. However, no credible information documents that Dr. Cunningham had opined that flu shots were actually responsible. So you see how they do this. The story is
Right.
about finding the body, and they're saying that that's not true. You know, they're leading you to believe that the actual story is not true. He is a doctor. He worked for the CDC. He was found dead. What part of that is not true? So, so see what they say was the body of a CDC doctor who is
You don't have to
exposed to
convince.
flu
You don't have
shot
to convince
found
me.
floating in a river. Okay, what part of that have they debunked? I'm wondering.
Right.
This is insane. I haven't been on Snopes for so long. We should just do a Snopes broadcast and see what they're talking about, because this is criminal as far as I'm concerned. Can you imagine his family having to read this kind of crap?
Do you want to know something? Facebook just made a deal and they're going to use Snopes to debunk what's true and what's not true on Facebook.
Hey, let's do a debunking Snopes show.
This is the premier example of how sad it's gotten that some organization that like they can't even spell in their claims, who sworn the public.
I was like, is that me? I'm not a good reader. But
No,
here, you could
it's a
go
problem.
on and on here. Have officials warned that someone is injecting poison into plastic water bottles? Does Facebook, did David Hogg lie about being on the campus during mass shooting? The way that they phrase this is so misleading, because they'll take one little tiny bit that is perhaps not true. Maybe, he had his toe on the campus, but he wasn't fully on the campus.
You're right. I've got to use an example because last night we had a few people from dinner, and in the background, which makes me crazy, was the TV going with 60 Minutes. And I said, is this an old 60 Minutes? Because what they were talking about was old news to me. And it was being incorrectly presented. And they said, no, this is new. This is tonight's show. And I said, well, this information is incorrect because this has been 3 days ago. This was proven to be a different story. And the guy was like, I trust 60 Minutes. Really? Why? Because they've been around for 40 years, so you should trust them?
Yeah, this is exactly what happened after the election. I was talking to Tom's daughter, and I just met her, and she was very freaked out, as everyone was. All the snowflakes were freaking out about the election, right? And she said, so you're telling me that this investigation into Donald Trump isn't true? She goes, I read it in Maclean's. And so you're telling me that Maclean's isn't true?
Sorry.
And I started laughing, which is my way to deal with nervousness, because I thought, I'm just meeting this young lady and she's already, she already hates me.
So I just want to make a point about the start page. Sorry to interrupt you. So one of the things if you look, you see start page, it's powered by Google. So the way the information shows up here is the same order that it shows up on Google. If you take the same search, copy CDC doctor found dead, copy it, and take it to DuckDuckGo,
I should have you doing this.
Things come up in a different order.
I think, I did it backward there. So let's
Yeah.
just do this.
Yeah, and things come up in a different order.
We got
Natural
Nutro,
Blaze.
Natural
It's all
Blaze.
different order.
Mm-hmm.
The start page, and I'm sorry to burst your bubble, it's still being run by the Google search engine.
She'll tell you that. It's not really about the search. It's about the fact that you're not, you don't have to be VPN'd. She's more concerned about not being followed and,
and them not taking your information. Well, here's the difference between DuckDuckGo and Start Page. In DuckDuckGo, it doesn't decide for you which is the most important thing for you to read. It just brings you it brings you a lot of information. So if you're looking for something very specific, you have to put in a very specific search criteria. Like doctor found dead, was he working on flu shot, right? And because you get way more information coming up, and it's not in any specific order. They
Well,
don't
let's just take a
decide.
look at this. There's, first of all, they don't have a picture of the guy on the tree. We still have a little bit of apple cider vinegar being advertised, but that's okay. Better than Anderson Cooper. And
Because these
so
people don't
we've
have
got
huge advertisers. Yeah.
body of missing CDC doctor found in river, no foul play suspected. So that's an interesting way of putting it too. Don't you find the headings quite interesting?
Yeah. Well, because a lot of people just get their news from reading the headings or from reading the first paragraph. And that is not where the facts are, folks. It's not in the top paragraph. The summation's at the bottom. You got to scroll to the bottom. You got to look at the ending.
That's scroll. Become a patron.
No, look at no foul play suspected, of course.
Of
See,
course.
they're being facetious at the end. They're showing you, hey.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to find the summation. So, it's a great point.
Yeah, it's a good way to go and just compare things. And you're right. I think it's good to go to Start Page, to go to DuckDuckGo. There's a variety of other ways that you can find your information. If you want to see how you're being psyoped, do go to Google, though, because it'll take you 10 pages before you get to any of the other stuff. Now, I just want to see if they have the Snopes on here. They don't have the Snopes on that, but they did. I think they have the Snopes on here, which is kind of interesting. Or was it, maybe it was the Google search. Let's take a look at that. Is Ray there? What do you think, Ray?
I am.
Are you
Sorry,
enjoying our
question?
search?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, it's a topic that's close to home for me. I tell the story that in 2012 they gave us the option to go underground or go 6 feet underground, and there's 120 dead researchers in the autism vaccine connection. But there's a lot more dead people than that, and there's a lot more people who had to move off continent and go into hiding because of the pharmaceutical stranglehold that they want to have over us.
Let's just take
I don't have anything Google on my machine, but that doesn't mean I can use the internet. And I don't know if you're aware of the Hillary Clinton scepter chip and that nonsense, but we're all in a lot of trouble. It's in my assessment of the data why XP was discontinued, and because it didn't have the.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's talking about something important, so that's why we can't hear him.
Yep, that's what happens. Here is, oh gosh, it's amazing all these pop-ups. I try not to have that on my site because I find them really irritating, as if I can't see all the ads here. But here's some of the faces of those that have gone missing. Look at these folks. Just people that are minding their own business, trying to help the world. And this is what they have to show for it. A face on a website. And,
right. Missing doctors, like that many doctors go missing. What's interesting for me, when I was dealing with my own personal health problems, when I got overloaded with mold and had problems from methane gas, I was searching and doing a lot of research, looking for doctors that had done, had success in treating those illnesses, neurological problems. I had problems with my memory. I was having mini strokes and strokes. I had, all sorts of things were going on. And I finally found this one doctor that had all this great information, and he was in Arizona. And he said, in order to get healthy, when you have mold in your system, you've got to get to a dry climate. You got to isolate yourself. You've got to do all these things. It all made sense to me. And I started saving this guy's information because I wanted to sort of begin curating a site, because I had done so much research. And there wasn't really like a clearinghouse of that information for people. And that doctor disappeared, disappeared. And his site disappeared, gone. I still to this day do not know what happened to that doctor. But his site, I went to his site one day and it was gone, just gone, completely gone. So, anybody who doesn't believe that good people go missing for doing good things is completely naive and really needs to do a little bit more research on what happens with whistleblowers. This is one of the things that actually is very encouraging about what's been happening recently in my world as a journalist, is a lot more people are stepping forward with information because they've done some clearing out of some of the corrupted roadblockers in the FBI and the CIA and some of these different government organizations, people who were protecting the criminals. And now whistleblowers are feeling more confident to step forward with their information. There was nowhere safe to give the information before. I mean, look at how hard they're working to shut Julian Assange and WikiLeaks down. That's, to me, it's like, some people don't even, and then somebody said to me the other day, oh, well, WikiLeaks is not an accredited site. Who says it's not an accredited site? They have a flawless journalism record. There's no other news organization in the world that can claim a flawless record.
Somebody who doesn't know what accredited is.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's all a matter of how we've been trained, I guess. It's really
one of the things we're doing, Ray, in case you didn't notice it when you were out of the room, was that we've got Freedom Force News up on the screen. And so I was thinking that even if you can't be here some of the time, it would be great for you to go on. You could type messages to us, help, SOS. But you could lead us to some of the articles that we might want to take a look at. And I thought this might be a really good way to frame this show. Nothing like talking about it on air, but I do like to have these kind of discussions to, hone in on what it is that we really need to be doing. And you've already done so much of the work. I mean, you're going every day and you're putting up articles. Is there one that I can put up on the screen today, for instance, that you were talking about writing something recently? Well, just because of that, I am going to put something up on the screen. Over to Alison. I'm sorry to jump in. I just wanted to see if we could get Ray before he dropped off. But he apparently says it's because he's mentioned the Q word and the C word all in one conversation. So while you're talking, I'm just going to bring up an article so that people can get a sense of what they can take a look at here. And maybe that's the best thing to do. Forget about going over to Start Page or DuckDuckGo. Why not go to Freedom Force News, and we'll make sure that the articles are there. And, not that you want to corner the market or force people into a mindset, but I think that it's a good place to start so that you can move out from there and start doing your own research. Is that something that you can get behind, Ray?
Yeah, I've heard that Freedom Force News is a pretty good website. I hear that the administration there is interested in vetting the information and making sure that the information is as accurate as they can determine it to be. It's not the new Snopes, I can tell you that. We're not being paid by Hillary or Rothschilds or Pelosi or any of that crowd. In fact, we've got hundreds of hours in building that site. We're only about a month old. We are new, but we are not new to everything. We've come from, both of the administrators there have come from the CBTS website that was taken down. CBTS_stream was the Reddit site that was developed by Tracy Beans for the Q phenomenon. And she developed that in the middle to late December of last year. I was a moderator there for a while, and my partner at Freedom Force News was a moderator there for a while. Tracy ran into some problems. There were some other problems, but the site was seeing, it had 20,000 members, and it was seeing 12 million visits a month, and it received the largest DDoS attack in internet history, excuse me, about a month ago. And after that, it was taken down. But there's problems over at Reddit and the other platforms. They are not, they're not fairly run. And I was banned from Reddit when I tried to remove what I think are some of the black hats or the CIA operatives or something, there was something going on there that I was aware of. And using my administrative privileges there, I started to clean up the site, and I got removed and then banned from all of Reddit. And then the same thing happened to my friend Red Pill, who got removed from there just maybe 2 or 3 weeks after I had left. So we banded together and we put together freedomforcenews.com, and we have a forum, and we invite everybody to join us in putting up the research and helping us to share the information with people who are interested in having a decent civil conversation about the facts. It's not about team sports. It's about getting people on board with what's really happening, about getting people all working together and rowing together in the right direction. It's about bringing credibility, that's not quite the right word I'm looking for, back to journalism. Journalism is all opinion. Well, present company excluded, of course, but you know what I'm saying. Mainstream journalism today is not journalism at all. It's propaganda. And we're not really so much interested in propaganda, but we do want people to come there and put up the good information on the topics they're researching. And they're not always good topics. The pedophilia, the Satanism, there's some ugly, ugly topics that are going to need to be addressed to help sway the 10% of the population that we need into the new narrative as we go forward, and the new paradigm as we go forward, which is going to be based, in my opinion, on a more factual basis. We're not going to be spinning the stories like a competition sport. The truth is the truth, and you can't spin the truth and make it something else. So we're really interested in the facts, and we're interested in working together with people and building a community to go forward. But we do have measures in place so that what happened at CBTS does not happen at freedomforcenews.com. And we're working at that to make sure that the trolls and the troll bots don't arrive on our site and take over the site like they did at CBTS and at Reddit and some of the other sites over there. They send people in to do nasty stuff, and they send robots in to do nasty stuff. And we're aware of it. We know about the CIA tools. We know about stuff. We're not, I certainly can't pretend that we're going to be invincible, but we have a good staff there, and we're paying attention, and we're doing what we can to move together as a unit, as a group of people. I think that's where the future lies, is when we all kind of join together in the spiritual or the conscious body of consciousness, of understanding, of code, of ethic, of morality, of decency and respect for our fellow human beings, our fellow members of other consciousnesses on this planet. I'm speaking about the animals, as well as all of the plants and indigenous species that are so important to the natural balance and harmony of this environment. And people who have never been to the wilderness maybe not have the same perspective as those who have. But the trees that were cut down in the forests to build the cities destroyed the forests. And that destroyed the ecosystem in the forest. It disrupted the bears and the eagles and the salmon. And then now we're polluting it with all kinds of toxins and poisons. People, we really need to look at what we're doing. We need to get back to nature and to basics. We need to come home to who we really are and take off this charade, this mask of deceit, and work towards a better future together.
Well, gosh,
you think any of that made it to air?
Yeah, I think I think it was very well said. I've got to wrap up myself because I've got an early morning so that I can pay my bill.
It's hard to wrap up yourself. You know, it's a difficult thing to do, and it's going to take all night for Alison to do that. So we got to let her go and start wrapping herself up. So that was a wonderfully sort of synopsized view of what we were talking about tonight. And I'm really hoping that we can make this a regular thing. And in a sense, I think that just the Freedom Force News idea is probably the best one we could go with at this point to update people. You know, we've been sort of looking at what the actual theme is. It's partly that we want to get people PSYOP. Now we're talking a little bit differently about PSYOP than we are about red pilling, because you know all of these ridiculous ways of putting things get confusing. But I think it's for people that are not at the point necessarily where they're understanding some of this stuff, but they really know that there's something going on in the world and they want to find out more. So I advise you guys to go over to this site that I have up on the screen right now and follow the antics of Radiate and his pals over there, Red Pill, Radiate, and the gang. And I'm sure that we're going to see Alison over there. I want to say that I'm creating a little bit more of a community environment that goes along with the shows, and so that's what you'll find at characterdriven.com is more the media side of things, a place for people to talk about the shows themselves and perhaps bring into it some of the things that they've found in places like Freedom Force News. So thanks, Ray, for putting all that together, and we will continue to, I guess, would we call that promote it? I think just extol the virtues of going over and finding vetted news and finding a place to start. If you're confused, if you're feeling like you're being psyoped, you are. Congratulations. You're onto something. I'd go with that.
We're on Twitter and Gab, and we're going to be developing more, and we're happy to work with Character Driven, and we're going to be working together more as we collaborate and create the future together. It's about working together.
Yeehaw.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, on that happy note.
Thanks for having us on.
Oh, well, thanks so much. It's really your show. I just interrupt every once in a while, and we'll talk to you soon, and hopefully we will get people going over to Freedom Force, and we will be on encouraging people right here on air and be able to have a little bit more of a conversation in real time as well. So thanks, both of you. And
it's only going to get better from here.
Sorry, can you say that again?
It's only going to get better from here.
That's right. Okie dokie. I'm going to put on my PSYOP Recovery Extra, even though this is not officially the PSYOP Recovery.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you very much, Ray. It's a pleasure as always. Looking forward to
We'll be chatting as soon as we can.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Good night, everyone.
One of the initial steps of the military PSYOP program is directed toward the hostland military establishment itself. Since the military represents the government to the populace, their actions and attitudes can do much to create a favorable image of that government in the minds of the people. A soldier's attitude goes a long way toward implementing an effective military PSYOP program. Among the support elements needed are the light mobile printing team with its printing and editorial shelters. Also needed is a radio team to support existing radio stations, particularly in the back country. An audiovisual vehicle will help to increase the effectiveness of face-to-face communications. And a loudspeaker team will support tactical operations.